In this video, I'm discussing 8 collectible wines. These are all wines that I tasted during the TexSom conference. We have red, white, and champagne, and we have a variety of price points, so there should be something for everyone. The first collectible wine is one that was not actually poured at TexSom, but rather it's a wine that I opened for my collection for a group before dinner one night, and it was really darn good, so I'm going to include it anyway. I'm talking about the 2012 Chateau Gracia, which is a right bank Bordeaux from Saint-Emilion. Chateau Gracia was started back in 1994 when Michel Gracia purchased a 1.5 hectare parcel of land in a fantastic area near Trollong-Mondo. A short time later, he purchased an additional parcel near Angelus. Michel Gracia learned a lot about winemaking from the Chateau Somm winemaker, and it's quite clear that he was paying close attention, as the 2012 Gracia was outstanding. Chateau Gracia has very low yields, and as a result, its wines are intensely concentrated. This was a very opulent wine, but it was one that had ample acidity and also some minerality that I really appreciated. In fact, one advanced sommelier was so impressed with it that they actually blind tasted it and guessed that it was an $800 Bordeaux, such as Chateau Somm. So it does bear striking similarities to some wines that are much more expensive than this one. The Gracia wines are matured in 100% new French oak. This is a wine that will benefit from 6 to 7 years of additional age in the bottle. You can also find some back vintages in the secondary market, and pricing is fairly reasonable for the quality of this wine. For example, this 2012 can be had for around $140 or so. If you're looking for more newer releases, the 2018, 2019, and 2020 vintages are all exceptional as well. 2020 is particularly strong, and I found that one selling for around $75. And I saw the 2018 for around $90. So pretty friendly price points for an excellent wine. Although it's true that many collectible wines are expensive, they certainly do not have to be. This next collectible wine is an excellent example of that, as it sells for a very reasonable $40 a bottle. I'm talking about the 2020 Domaine Zind-Humbrecht Clos Jebsal Pinot Gris, which is from Alsace, France. This is the first dry Pinot Gris that Domaine Zind-Humbrecht has produced from this vineyard. This is a single vineyard wine, and it's a 1.3 hectare vineyard that's located on a steep south-facing slope, and it's just below a Grand Cru vineyard that's called Brand. This vineyard was replanted to Pinot Gris back in 1983, so the vines are getting close to 40 years old or so, and they're grown biodynamically. Historically, this fruit has been used to make an outstanding botrytis wine, but that's become progressively more challenging with global warming. The 2020 vintage in Alsace was extremely warm, and so the producer went ahead and harvested this fruit before botrytis could even set in, and then set out to make a wine that was bone dry. They succeeded wonderfully, and this wine was well received by critics. It's a wine that still has the descriptors that fans of the Clos Jebsal vineyard have come to appreciate, namely the telltale floral and honey aromas along with a creamy texture, but it is nevertheless bone dry, and it's a surprisingly light wine at around 13% ABV or so. This is a wine that's certainly capable of extended bottle aging, so there's definitely no rush to open this one. I know many of you are upset about the extreme and dramatic price increases for wines like Sassicaia and Ornellaia. Indeed, those wines were about 1/3 of the current price point just 10 years ago. I'm not that excited about those price hikes either, but rather than getting mad and complaining, what you can do is just buy Grattamacco instead. Grattamacco Bolgheri Superiore is a super Tuscan wine that's absolutely outstanding. I featured the 2019 vintage of this wine in my underrated video a while back, but at TexSom they were also pouring the 2020 vintage, and that one was outstanding as well. In fact, one major critic actually scores the 2020 Grattamacco a little bit higher than even the Sassicaia wine, and yet it sells for around 1/3 the price. You'll definitely want to shop around though, as I saw prices that were quite a bit higher as well. But I did find this one for as little as $105, and I would definitely keep an eye out for the 2019 vintage as well, as that one might be a few dollars cheaper, and it was definitely an outstanding vintage too. This wine is a blend that consists of 65% Cabernet Sauvignon, 20% Merlot, and 15% Sangiovese. I really like the addition of the Sangiovese as it adds some refreshness and acidity to this blend. This is definitely a well-balanced wine. In an emergency, you could definitely enjoy it with a multiple-hour decant and a meal, but it's going to be much better with another 5 to 6 years of age on it, and will certainly age for much longer than that as well. While prices on this wine have not kept up and increased the way that the Sassicaia and Ornellaia have, I fully expect that prices will begin to head north within the next few years. And so you'll definitely want to stock up on this wine while you can. You'll definitely be glad that you did. The next collectible wine comes from one of James Bond's favorite producers. I'm talking about Taittinger, specifically the 2012 Taittinger Comte de Champagne, which is a Brut Blanc de Blanc. 2012 was an outstanding vintage in Champagne, and as a Blanc de Blanc, this wine is 100% Chardonnay. Lately, they've been maturing around 5% of the wine in oak casks, and this has given the wine some additional texture and complexity that I've very much enjoyed. 2012 is definitely one of the better vintages of this wine in recent memory, along with the 2008. It's a wine that's certainly showing extremely well right now, so there's definitely no need to age it, but it is certainly one that will age well in the cellar also, so it gives you tremendous flexibility. I would probably get a few bottles of this one and buy one to enjoy in the near term, and then let the others rest in your cellar for a while. This wine did extremely well with critics and has received some very high scores. It's definitely one that should appreciate in value as well if you're looking to put some away for investment purposes. If you're interested in wine recommendations, wine collecting strategies, and learning more about wine, please do subscribe to my channel. I've been collecting wine for more than 15 years and also have a level 4 diploma from the WSET. So I have both formal certification as well as substantial practical knowledge from the School of Hard Knocks. In the late 1980s, famous California winemaker and consultant Paul Hobbs began doing some work for Catena in Mendoza, and he became enamored with Mendoza, so he ultimately started Viña Cobos back in the 1990s. So the next collectible wine that I'll be discussing is the Viña Cobos Marchiori Estate Cabernet Sauvignon, which sells for around $99 a bottle. This is a very special wine because it's 100% Cabernet Sauvignon from historic 80-year-old vines that are planted on their own roots, so no rootstock for these vines. This vineyard is located about 1,000 meters above sea level. This wine matures in 57% new French oak for around 18 months. It's a very polished wine, but it has lots of complexity as well due to the old vines. You should be able to get the 2018 and 2019 vintages in retail channels now, but you'll definitely want to act quickly, as unfortunately, these historic old vines are going to be torn out and the vineyard will be replanted because the yields are so extraordinarily low that it's no longer been profitable for them to produce this wine. There was a very strong contingent of Australian wines available for tasting at TexSom, and so the next collectible wine is the Vasse Felix Heytesbury Chardonnay, which comes from Margaret River. This is a very highly acclaimed Chardonnay year in and year out. The 2020 was particularly outstanding. Descriptors for this impressive Chardonnay included peach, lemon, grapefruit, ginger, oyster shell, wet stone, and struck match. It also had a texture and a long finish that I really appreciated. This is a Chardonnay that will definitely benefit from some additional bottle aging, and so I would definitely put this one in your cellar. And they do have a less expensive Chardonnay that's available for around $45 or $50 that you can use as a cellar defender in the meantime. One of the reasons that I don't feature South African wines more frequently on this channel is because very few of the good ones make their way to Dallas, Texas, which is where I'm based. So it was a real treat to be able to taste the next wine at TexSom. This is the 2020 Sadie family Palladius. This is an extremely impressive white blend that includes numerous grapes. The precise composition of the Palladius will vary from vintage to vintage, but it's always Chenin Blanc dominant. The 2020 vintage included Chenin Blanc, Grenache Blanc, Roussanne, Marsanne, Viognier, Palomino, Colombard, and several others. This wine had a bit of a waxy texture, but also lots of freshness and acidity due to the high percentage of Chenin Blanc. Descriptors for this wine included lemon, ginger, citrus blossom, honeysuckle, and wet rock. This wine matured for 12 months in concrete and then another 12 months in old oak foudre. This is wine that's unfined and unfiltered. This was my first experience with this impressive wine, but definitely hopefully not my last. I was a bit surprised that the price for this wine is $150 a bottle, but nevertheless this is a world-class wine, and it's one that I definitely hope to try again in the near term, perhaps in a blind tasting with some other extremely impressive white wines from other parts of the world, and then see who comes out on top and how well it fares compared to those other wines. The modern era in Margaret River began in 1967, and many people believe that the outstanding 2018 vintage may be the very best vintage ever in Margaret River's modern era. And so the next collectible wine is the 2018 Leeuwin Estate Art Series Cabernet Sauvignon, which comes from Margaret River, Australia. Leeuwin Estate is one of the top producers in Margaret River. This is a very highly acclaimed wine, despite the fact that it sells for a very reasonable $60 a bottle. This wine is a blend that consists of 97% Cabernet Sauvignon, and there's also 3% Malbec. This wine featured a mixed red and black fruit profile with bay leaf, licorice, and pepper notes. It had impressive structure, and it's definitely one that's going to be capable of aging well in your cellar for many years to come. This wine is an absolute no-brainer, as it sells for a very reasonable $60 a bottle. It's from one of the top producers in Margaret River, and it's also from perhaps the best vintage ever in Margaret River. So you really can't go wrong with this one. If you're interested in more of my recommendations from TexSom, please be sure to check the video in the pinned comment below.